Good afternoon, Iona. Welcome to the first episode of what we're going to call the CCR Pod for now. I'm Chris, here Colin and Robbie, CCR. Still haven't found a permanent name for this, but maybe we'll stick with maybe a pretty catchy name. Uh, what we're going to do on this show is just talk about sports, our favorite sports teams, what's going on in the sports world. Specifically right now is mostly the football and baseball world. That's really what's hot right now. Um, and I have two guys here who are really into football. I'm more of a baseball guy, but I'll touch on football a little bit with these guys. So take it away.
Well, I'll take it away, and I'll start off with the New York Giants. Thank you again for that introduction, Chris. I'm Colin, and to start off, I'm going to talk about my favorite team, the New York Giants. Now, the Giants are coming off a season that was very bad. We're talking 4-13, a season where Joe Judge, the head coach, got fired, and a lot of turmoil all around in all facets. And now the Giants have hired a new head coach, Brian Daboll, and a new general manager, Joe Shane. And this has kind of been viewed as the start of something new, maybe a new chapter, a new era in Giants land. And the first way they could prove this was this first week one game against the Tennessee Titans. Now, in this week one game, the Titans are coming off a season in which they were the first seed in the AFC and really being very dominant. But the Giants really got off to a bad start in this game. They were down 13-0 at half, and it really looked like a lot of the same old Giants that we've seen in the past few years. A lot of troubles, a lot of, inefficiency on offense. Daniel Jones is really struggling. But then the second half comes, and the Giants start to, really start to pull away in that game. Saquon Barkley, a guy who, for the better part of the past 2 or 3 seasons has not been healthy at all, has really was able to, take off in this game. In total, he finished with 164 yards, 18 carries, and he also had a touchdown score. And as a Giants fan, just absolutely fantastic to see this out of Saquon Barkley. He's a guy who, his first season, absolutely phenomenal. You're looking at the rookie of the year, a guy who really established himself as one of the top running backs in football. And, it's been very tough for him as of late. The second season, he had a little bit of injuries, but he still was a very good player. The third year was when he tore his ACL. And then in that fourth season, not a lot of production. He was coming off that ACL injury. You didn't really see a lot there. But, overall, Saquon Barkley, a fantastic game and definitely a very encouraging sign for Giants fans, especially considering that his contract's coming up. And it's been a big talk over whether or not you're going to pay Saquon Barkley. Now, the way I see it is that he has to prove that he's healthy first. And he can stay healthy throughout this whole entire season, keep up the same high level of production that I think you kind of have to pay the man. But if not, then you have to explore other options. But that is another discussion for another day. Going back to this game, Saquon Barkley started to really get off a bunch of huge carries. The Giants actually ended up tying the game off a huge touchdown bomb from Daniel Jones and Sterling Shepard, a 65-yard touchdown score. And, from that point on, Tennessee scored another touchdown, took a 7-point lead. And, even despite the fact that the Giants came back into the game, they still really were not able to take advantage of opportunities. Tennessee ended up having a fumble to punt, which the Giants recovered, which led to another interception from Daniel Jones, a pretty awful read, Saquon Barkley in the end zone. But after that happened, the Titans got the ball back. They could not score, and the Giants went on a final game-winning drive, actually, which ended up being a game-winning drive because on a 4th and 1, Brian Daboll, in his first game as a head coach, Mike Kafka was calling the plays, but in Brian Daboll's offense, Daniel Jones went for a rollout scramble and got the first down. And then the Giants scored a touchdown with a minute to go in this ball game. And probably what is one of the gutsiest calls I've seen in a while, especially from a Giants head coach, Brian Daboll, in his first ever game as an NFL head coach, decided to go for 2. And this was a huge decision. And it was a play in which Saquon Barkley got a shovel pass to the end zone, and the play that actually resembled a lot of what offensive coordinator Mike Kafka used to run in Kansas City. You saw a lot of times in Kansas City that for 2-point conversions, Patrick Mahomes would do shovel passes to his running backs. And the Giants ended up taking a 21-20 lead. Now, as a Giants fan, I still had cautious optimism in this final minute because, let's face it, the Giants have been pretty bad for the past 5 seasons, and I've seen them lose these games so many times before. I remember many examples. I remember Jake Elliott hit a 61-yarder to beat us. I remember Graham Gano hit a 64-yarder to beat us. A lot of instances in which the Giants have lost off heartbreaking game-winning field goals. And it was looking like it was going to be the exact same scenario. The Giants were committing a lot of dumb penalties. The Titans were marching down the field, and it came up to a final field goal by Randy Bullock from 47 yards, which he ended up missing. And the Giants became 1-0 for the first time since 2016, and only the second time in my 11-plus years of being a fan of this team. And, very great start to the season. A lot you can take away. Brian Daboll, fantastic job coaching in his first game. Very, very gutsy call, which worked off. Saquon Barkley, phenomenal performance. And, overall, cautious optimism, I think, is the key here because it's the start of a new era. And hopefully for Giants fans, you got the Panthers next Sunday. We'll get into that later when we talk about the Week 2 games. But hopefully you can just build off of this. It's still a great win, and we'll see what happens going forward. But now I'm going to switch it over to you, Robbie, and talk about the New York Jets. Your New York Jets. How did they
Thank
do
you,
in week
Colin.
one?
Thank you guys. But yeah, the New York Jets, they played on Sunday as well. They had the Baltimore Ravens in town at MetLife Stadium on a sloppy Sunday afternoon, and the Jets did not look great. Joe Flacco, I mean, he went 37 of 59 for 309 yards, which, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is 5 yards per attempt, or under 5 yards per attempt, with a touchdown and an interception on an overthrow intended for Lawrence Cager. But yeah, the Jets did not look anything spectacular, especially on offense, scoring only 9 points in the entire game, including a late touchdown to the tight end from Joe Flacco. But the Jets, 392 total yards. I mean, that's not bad. And they had more than Baltimore, which, I mean, it's not the best thing in the world. I mean, Lamar Jackson looked great throughout the game, especially in the second half with 3 passing touchdowns, including 2 to Devin Duvernay. But at the end of the day, the Jets, I feel like they could have won the game since had so many chances, but they became very predictable, especially in the second half with the offensive side of the ball. Joe Flacco not getting rid of the ball in the pocket, getting sacked too many times late in the game. But then you look at Baltimore once again, their defense held their own. They had a great game defensively, especially in the second half. Jets had so many chances in the beginning of the game, which resulted later in punts, miscues, missed field goal by Greg Zuerlein in the second quarter. And the Jets just kept leaving the door open, giving Baltimore chances that, quite frankly, they shouldn't have had. I mean, Lamar Jackson made some weird decisions in the first half. They had almost under 100 total yards in the first half, and the Jets had 188. So it's crazy to see the comparison. And then in the second half, Lamar Jackson just decided to become looking like his MVP self again with 3 touchdowns, including 2 late ones to Devin Duvernay in the back of the end zone, including a 50-plus yard, the first one the Jets have allowed in 4 seasons. But at the end of the day, the Jets defense held their own until the second half started because the Jets allowed too many late points, too many miscues on defense. Sauce Gardner, though, the first-round pick from the Jets, he looked good. He looked good. No touchdowns going after him. He had 1 penalty early in the first half, which was a late holding call. But, I mean, the Jets rookies, they looked all right. Jermaine Johnson had a sack and 2 tackles for loss. We had Garrett Wilson, who juked 2 defenders out of their shoes in the first half on his first catch, which went for 9. He had 2 receptions in the game. But the Jets, we don't know about them because they didn't have Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson is their future under Saleh and GM Joe Douglas. But when you really can't consider the Jets as like who they are yet until Wilson comes back. Because once Zach Wilson comes back, he's going to light a fire into the offense. So I feel like with Joe Flacco, I think Mike White should be starting on Sunday. He's not, by the way. It's Joe Flacco again, week 2. So against the Cleveland Browns. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Jets can do on offense against the Browns defense, which I believe is just as good, if not better, especially around the edge. So it's going to be very interesting to see what the Jets can do in the upcoming games with Flacco at the helm until Wilson can come back. But let's dive into some of the other week 1 games. We had Cincinnati and Pittsburgh, which was a very interesting game. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, we'll go into it a little bit. So, this is coming right off the Bengals' improbable Super Bowl run, a season which no one really saw coming, a season in which they were projected to be the worst team in the AFC North, and they almost won the Super Bowl. So a lot of expectations for the Bengals this season. And it really all rests on the shoulders of number 9, the quarterback, Joe Burrow. And he really did not have a very good football game. Granted, he did have 338 passing yards. He had 33 completions, but 2 touchdowns and 4 picks, including the fumble. And kind of crazy to see that after an offense that was so explosive a year ago, and really Joe Burrow was so dominant down the stretch in that postseason, to see him come out with a game like that, it was definitely kind of surprising. But even despite that, the Bengals were in this game all the way till the end of this game. Actually, this game went into overtime. And the Pittsburgh Steelers, this is the first season coming off losing Ben Roethlisberger. They have Mitch Trubisky at quarterback. And we're still kind of waiting to see when Kenny Pickett will come into the fold. I imagine that Trubisky will get a few games here and there. Maybe Trubisky plays the first half of the season, but then eventually Kenny Pickett will come in, be that starting quarterback. But Trubisky really was kind of what you expected him to do. He was 21 for 38, 194 passing yards, a touchdown in the pick. Not necessarily going to lose you the football game, but he's not really going to win it for you.
Yeah.
But, going into that overtime, we saw a missed field goal by Evan McPherson, which would have won the game. And, Evan McPherson was a guy who really got a lot of attention last season for really kind of, being a very confident kicker, a guy who was a rookie, really good. but he basically missed a chip shot field goal. I believe it was 29 yards. I'm not sure the exact distance, but then Pittsburgh gets the ball back and eventually goes down the field and scores the game-winning field goal. But it's also very important to mention for this game, this came at a price for Pittsburgh. TJ Watt suffered a pec injury, and we don't know how long he's going to be out for, but he said that he is pretty confident he'll be back before the end of this season. But, not a lot you can really – I just have to imagine this is a fluke for Cincinnati. We saw how dynamic that offense was last season. We saw Burrow, the Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Mixon, other guys getting into the mold last season. And, all around looking at the offense, Joe Mixon was held to, only 3 yards a carry. Jamar Chase had a good game. He had 10 catches for 129 yards, but you really did not see a lot of the other factors in that Bengals Super Bowl run really come out besides Jamar Chase and produce at that high of a level. So I think it's kind of a fluke game for Cincy, but definitely the biggest takeaway we get from this is that TJ Watt's going to miss some time, and that's going to be really hurtful to this Pittsburgh team because people forget, but they really did make the playoffs last year, really without an offense. TJ Watt had one of the most phenomenal defensive seasons we've ever seen, actually tying the sack record of Michael Strahan. And, the Steelers ended up getting rolled by the Chiefs in the wild card game. People kind of saw that coming. But now losing TJ Watt takes a lot away from your defense. And eventually when Kenny Pickett does come in, maybe if TJ Watt's not back yet, it's going to be hard to win those football games. So I think that for Pittsburgh, it's kind of a process. It's a new era in Pittsburgh. No more Ben Roethlisberger. But, it's kind of the changing at the guard. So we'll see how that goes going forward. Robbie, what do you got to make of this game?
It's an interesting game to look at. It's another game where you had so many missed opportunities. You go back to the McPherson play. I looked it back over it today. The only reason McPherson missed that field goal was a bad snap. It went over. It could have gone away for them. It could have been a much worse situation. Well, I think you said it perfectly, being a fluke game for Cincinnati. I'm looking at Pittsburgh though long term. What do? Mitchell Trubisky. I don't think he could really lead that offense at all. He had opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. Now, granted, it's week 1, but I feel like if you pick it, he would have more confidence to get out of the pocket and run, make those late throws that you needed to hit. Because he missed a couple late throws, especially in the fourth quarter, that really could have iced the game for Pittsburgh before giving Cincinnati even a chance. So I feel like at the end of the day, Pittsburgh should be concerned about TJ Watt. We've heard, I've actually heard today that he could be out for 6 to 8 weeks with the torn pec. He's not expected to have surgery. So I feel like when he comes back, you're really going to see a real Pittsburgh defense, or it's going to be aggressive off the edge, because I really don't think Pittsburgh has that great of an edge rush other than him. So it's going to be interesting to see in the long term with Pittsburgh who's going to step up at that edge rusher position. But as looking at this game as well, Cincinnati, they have to cut down the turnovers. You never expect to see that from Burrow. But I'm going to look at one point in the game. It's late in the fourth. Jamar Chase had a chance to win the game. Actually, overtime, sorry. Jamar Chase had a chance to win the game and reached out across the goal line. He makes the catch at the 1, doesn't reach the ball over the line. Cincinnati turns it over later. Gets stuffed on the goal line late in the fourth quarter. So at the end of the day, Cincinnati should not be mad about this. They should be mad about the loss, but I don't think they should be that concerned. But if this team keeps continuing to be a trend, I feel like they become more concerned as time goes on. But I want to acknowledge something else that happened today. We heard that Jamal Adams, strong safety such linebacker for Seattle, who got a major injury on Monday Night Football against Denver, which we're going to dive into that game in a second, is out for the season. Colin, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, Jamal Adams, he's been a guy who's kind of been, I wouldn't say ridiculed, but he's been a guy who's been criticized a lot in NFL circles, for not being able to really get a lot of interceptions. But despite that fact, we all know Jamal Adams is a phenomenal safety, a phenomenal player. He was a guy who really was a holdover from Seattle from the Russell Wilson era. Seattle made that move with the Jets as a kind of a win now move to solidify their defense back when they had Wilson. But now the Seahawks are in a rebuilding state. We'll get into that game with the Broncos later because that was also a very crazy game. But Jamal Adams is definitely going to be a big loss for that Seahawks team because let's face it, they're a team that really does not have a whole lot of stars. You have DK Metcalf on offense. You do have, some young pieces there on that roster, but it's going to be tough, for Seattle going forward. Obviously wishing for the best for Jamal Adams. He can come back and be the same player that he was, but definitely a huge blow to that defense for sure. And, in total, that's not the only injury we had this week. And we'll get into this right now, too. Dak Prescott was another guy who got hurt. And it was a finger injury, which he suffered in the Sunday night. I wouldn't say a blowout, but just a very ugly loss at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He's going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. They said he could come back sooner. But that's also a very big blow to the Cowboys because the Cowboys got worse over this past offseason. You lose Amari Cooper, you lose some talent there on that roster, and you don't think you're going to be as good. But the Cowboys were still viewed by many to be the best team in the NFC East. People viewed it as the Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles. But with Dak Prescott now hurt, it gets tough. They're going to be playing the Cincinnati Bengals next week, who we just mentioned before. They're going to be playing the Giants in week 3. And a lot of divisional games coming up. They're going to be playing Washington a couple of times that Dak Prescott may miss. So that injury is going to be very hurtful to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not sure if that makes necessarily Philadelphia now the team to beat in this division because now Dallas is the only team in this division without a win. The Giants, Washington, and Philadelphia all won their week 1 contests. So Dak Prescott, a huge loss for the Cowboys. We have to see how it goes going forward. It seems as if Cooper Rush is going to be the quarterback for them, which I don't know a lot about Cooper Rush, but I can't imagine that the Cowboys are going to be very successful doing that. So, Robbie, I'll ask you, what do you have to make about that big Dak Prescott injury?
It's another interesting scenario because I feel like Dallas, with all the pieces they lost, when Dak went down, I saw the play. I felt like Dallas was screwed from the start because they lost Lyle Collins. They lost Amari Cooper. Michael Gallup's still hurt. So it's really, I feel like it's CeeDee Lamb, Dak, and Ezekiel Elliott. Once you lose that core piece in Dak, especially at the quarterback position for how valuable it is, it's really concerning. And knowing like the Cowboys, Dak's injury history, because he's had a little bit of one now, I feel like Dak could return soon, but you never know. And Cooper Rush, who by the way has won multiple games for this team, he's a competent quarterback. Like he's not like anything spectacular, but he could go out and put his best game out there to win them a football game. Like I feel like he could beat some teams, maybe not in their division, but outside, maybe in the AFC. So at the end of the day, I don't know what Dallas goes from here, but I want to go back to Seattle a little bit because they played Denver in the Russell Wilson return game and went out and beat Denver, which led by quarterback, former New York Jet, Geno Smith, who went 23 of 28 for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had a game. And watching it live, it was very interesting to see that Denver didn't look that great on defense, especially at points in the game. But everyone held their own ground, and Seattle actually looked decent. And with a team that everyone thought they're going to finish last in the NFC West, which, by the way, they currently lead the NFC West because everyone else lost. So it's very – and Russell Wilson, he went 29 of 42 for 340 yards. 1 touchdown, though. That was the concerning part, but that's not all. Denver decided to go for it late, not to go for it late in the 4th, and let Brandon McManus attempt a long field goal, and he missed it. Colin, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, you just have to set the stage a little bit for it. So the Denver Broncos are a team that since basically 2015 have been devoid of a superstar quarterback play. They had Peyton Manning, but that last season, even when they won the Super Bowl, Peyton was still not an elite level. So ever since then, the Broncos have tried multiple different options which have not worked. You remember Brock Osweiler? Yes. They had Joe Flacco, I believe, also at one point. I think they tried Paxton Lynch, Teddy Bridgewater, a lot of guys who just have not worked. So finally, they be aggressive and they make this huge trade for Russell Wilson. Actually, recently paying him, I believe, around $200 million, huge contract. And he's basically expected to be the savior of this franchise. And the first game here, Russell Wilson plays his old team. He actually got booed before the game started, which I thought was kind of crazy considering how he won them the Super Bowl. But, fans in Seattle probably do not have a lot of love for him after, kind of requesting a trade and getting out of there. But besides the point, we're in a situation where the Broncos down by 1 point with 4 minutes to go have a chance to win the football game. And they get it past Seattle 50. They're at the 47-yard line. There's still a minute 20 left on the clock, mind you. But what is Nathaniel Hackett doing his first game as a head coach and the first time he really has to manage the game clock? He does not call a timeout at all. Now, what he does is he lets the clock run out and kick a 64-yard field goal, like you said, and miss it. Now, keep in mind that Brandon McManus has never hit a 60-yard field goal once in his career, and that is a kick which would have tied for the second longest field goal in NFL history, but it does not stop there. So the Broncos call a timeout to stop the clock. They use their first timeout to set up the field goal. Then, with 2 timeouts left, the Seahawks get the ball. The game is over. What the Broncos do is they call the last 2 timeouts when the game's already over just to prolong the game so Seattle has to wait to take their knees. So, really a very ugly start for Nathaniel Hackett's coaching career. He was the offensive coordinator for Green Bay, oversaw a lot of those Aaron Rodgers and Packers postseason collapses. But granted, he was the coordinator for when Aaron Rodgers had his MVP season, so maybe you see that with Russell Wilson. But there are so many different ways that the Broncos could have played this. First of all, you just go for fourth down. You paid Russell Wilson $200 million to basically win you these situations. Russell Wilson, throughout his career, has been a quarterback who's been phenomenal in the fourth quarter. And I seriously don't think that he would have not been able to get 5 yards. I mean, at least that there's a much higher statistical probability that you are going to make a 4th and 5 than his 64-yard field goal, no matter what way you do it. But say you want to kick the 64-yard field goal, you still call the timeout with a minute 10 to go, because in that case, you still have a chance for Seattle to, run the ball 3 times. You call your timeouts, you get the ball back with maybe 30 seconds left. Instead, you do probably the worst possible scenario. You don't go for the 4th down, and you kick the 64-yard field goal. And then because of that, Seattle wins. It is now, like you said, first place in the NFC West. Who would have saw that coming? But, just really awful game management. We have to see how that goes going forward for the Broncos, because the Broncos are a team which many view maybe as a Super Bowl contender, a team which is going to go far in the postseason. But if Nathaniel Hackett is going to continue to make coaching decisions like that, you really have to wonder, where is this team going to go? I don't know what to make of it.
So after all of that, it's very interesting. But let's dive into week 2. We have week 2 preview. I have a game of the week I want everyone to maybe be a little bit interested in. Of course, we have Thursday Night Football tonight with the Chargers playing the Chiefs. My game to watch for this week, I'm going to go with Vegas playing Arizona. 2 teams that lost their opener. And Kyler Murray did not look spectacular. The Arizona defense looked atrocious. Taking on Derek Carr and Devontae Adams, a very interesting game that will be at 4:20 on Sunday. What do you got? What do you think would be a superstar matchup this weekend?
Superstar matchup. Taking a look at the slate, in terms of the primetime matchups we have, let's take a look here. Bengals versus Cowboys, that's going to be a game which people are going to look at a lot because of how bad the Bengals were last week, and also Cooper Rush coming in for the Cowboys. Taking a look across the schedule, you also have Buccaneers and Saints. The Buccaneers have had a history of being very bad against the Saints. And, the Saints had a victory where they came back against the Falcons last week. And I'm still not really entirely sure what to make of the Saints. I'm not sure how they're going to be this season. It's very possible they could be a playoff team, but it's also possible they could not be as great. So that's another game we have to wait and see. I actually, one game I'm very interested in is Patriots-Steelers, because, the Patriots lost last week in Miami. They usually lose in Miami, but Patriots had a really weird offseason. They lose Josh McDaniels, so they have Matt Patricia and Joe Judge call your offensive plays. And let me tell you, I have watched Joe Judge coach quite a few ball games. You do not want Joe Judge calling your plays. So the Patriots are kind of in a tough position there. But, Mac Jones was Rookie of the Year last year, had a very promising year, was really the best quarterback out of that loaded draft class, at least in the rookie season. So I'm interested to see going forward what it's going to be like for New England, because Bill Belichick, obviously we all know, the greatest coach of all time, all of that. All the accolades are deserved, but just really weird what he's been doing recently, in terms of how he's been handling his approach. It really seems like, they're kind of taking a step away from how they used to be back with Brady. And, the Steelers, we just talked all at length about, TJ Watt. And when are we going to see Kenny Pickett? Like, let's say Mitch Trubisky has a game where he throws 4 picks, has a very bad game. Are you going to go to Pickett? We really don't know. So I'm not sure who's going to win that Patriots-Steelers game, but I know that's going to go a long way in kind of determining how their seasons are going to go. So I'm very interested in that game. In the Arizona Raiders game you mentioned, I think it's going to be interesting to see as well, because 2 teams that made the playoffs last year and 2 teams that came in with huge expectations. The Raiders went out and got Devontae Adams. The Cardinals gave Kyler Murray that huge contract, which, although controversial, was a huge move for their organization. So in terms of who's going to win that game, it's really tough to say. The Raiders are the home team, and the Cardinals are banged up. They're missing DeAndre Hopkins. He's suspended. So I'll probably go with Las Vegas there. And in terms of Patriots-Steelers, it's really tough to say, but I have to go for the Patriots just based off experience and coaching. But, Robbie, what do you make about the other slate and what we have here?
You brought up some interesting games, but there's one more game I'm very interested in. It's 2 teams that went out and won on Sunday. Minnesota playing the Eagles on Monday Night Football. Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson against Jalen Hurts and his offense in Philly. It's going to be a very interesting. I love what both teams did in week 1. I'm very impressed with Minnesota's defense. They look good. They looked really good, especially on the defensive end. Kirk Cousins looked all right. Jalen Hurts, my problem with Philly is their defense, because they allowed 35 points to Detroit. Well, granted, Detroit is not that terrible, but they're not anything spectacular. So 35 points, I thought their defense was solid, but 35 points to Detroit is not anything crazy. So But despite all that, I'm going to go with Philadelphia on Monday Night Football against Minnesota. But, gentlemen, let's pick the game tonight. Kansas City and the Chargers. Who do you guys got?
Well, I'm going to go with the Los Angeles Chargers. And the reason for this is because, Kansas City has, a history of, beating up on the Chargers. Kansas City has really kind of dominated that division for the past few years. But I do think the Chargers are a very talented football team. Justin Herbert, only in his second, third season, but is still phenomenal. You see that he's really improving by the minute. You see that Chargers offense is really potent. They almost made the playoffs last year, which is a whole nother mismanagement. You all remember that game with the Raiders, how there's supposed to be a tie, but I think this is going to be a good season for the Chargers. That whole entire division in general is very loaded. So, it's hard to kind of imagine that one of those teams is going to miss the playoffs. But I do think that, even though they're on the road, the game is in Kansas City. I do think the Chargers come out with a huge victory here. And, it's going to be interesting to see the first ever NFL game we're going to see on Amazon Prime with Al Michaels going to be calling it after so many years at NBC. So going to be really interested going forward to see how streaming works in the NFL. But now for the first time, I'm going to switch it over to Chris here. Chris, what is your prediction?
Well, everyone, I know you all forgot about me, but I'm still here. Yeah, fantastic week for football. And we're talking about tonight's game. I'm going to also go with the Chargers. I mean, the Chiefs absolutely steamrolled last week. It was who did they play?
They play the Cardinals.
The Cardinals.
That's right. Yeah, I remembered watching the highlights. Crazy 4 points against crazy and away from home as well. The Chargers having that nice win against it was the Raiders, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
I mean, you'd expect them to have a better defensive performance than that, but it's gonna be a close game, I think, for sure. But and especially with Kansas City, with what they put up last week, that's gonna be tough. But I'm gonna go with the Chargers to win pretty decisively, maybe in the 20 area.
That's interesting, but there's one thing to know that both of you guys have not said yet. Keenan Allen's not playing in this game. So it's a very interesting way to look at it. You want to pick LA because I feel like LA is the better team. They're more well-rounded together. I do like LA's defense much better than Kansas City's. I am going with Kansas City since they actually have healthy receivers. I love what McCall Hardman was able to do with Patrick Mahomes in week 1. They still have Travis Kelce, an elite tight end, probably the best tight end in the NFL. So I feel like Kansas City, with everything coming together, no major injuries. Edwards-Helaire should still, I feel like he's going to have a solid game tonight. I'm going to go with the Kansas City Chiefs, changing it up a little bit after these two pick the Chargers. But let's dive into baseball a little bit. Do you want to take it away?
Well, yeah, to conclude football, I'm a big Giants fan, in case you all were interested. So, the big win on Sunday. Had many opportunities to giant. The ending could have been a Giants loss. Ending could have been a real Giants loss as well. If that field goal is made, I mean, we've seen that in the past. Losses made like that for the Giants. But they squeaked out of there with the win. Squeaked out of Tennessee with the win. And just a little bit of hope for the Giants.
Now, Chris, I know you've been waiting for this. Take it away. Baseball, New York Yankees. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Yankees baseball. We got 2 Yankee fans and a Met fan here. So, of course, 2 happy fans and a depressed fan. And the Yankees have been playing a lot better recently. They just swept the Boston Red Sox in 2 games. Really, I think the biggest story in baseball right now is this American League MVP race. Aaron Judge versus Shohei Ohtani, which I think we should all dive into in a second. But really, I mean, Aaron Judge is putting this team on his back. It's not just Aaron Judge, though, recently. Yesterday, Gleyber Torres, that Little League 3-run home run, which it seems like the Yankees have just ran into Fenway Park and caused the Boston defense to play like a Little League defense. I mean, you saw a few weeks ago, not a few weeks, it was a few months ago, the July game with Joey Gallo's pop out that turned into almost inside the park home run. Another Little League, another opportunity for a Little League home run. Yesterday, we actually got one. I think Reese McGuire was the catcher for the Red Sox. That was just a terrible, terrible throw. The Red Sox, the Yankees snuck out of Boston with 2 wins, and right now they're lead against, I think Tampa Bay is playing Toronto right now. I think Tampa Bay won. So I think
I believe the lead is 5.5 or 6.
It's 5. I'm saying if Tampa Bay wins this, I think it would be it would be 6.5 lead. Toronto would still be in second, I believe. It would be a 6.5. Tampa Bay would be 6.5 behind the Yankees. So you're in a more comfortable position than where you were a few weeks ago. Obviously, you all know the Yankees with that 15.5 game lead. Getting really nervous there as a Yankee fan when it goes down to, down to 4 games, I think, at one point last week.
It was 4 before the Boston series.
And I remember that series. It was last series. It was a few series ago when
Tampa Bay,
the
right?
Yankees played the Rays in Tampa Bay. Aaron Judge scored like all 4 of the runs that they scored in that game. It was ridiculous, including I think it was his 53rd home run in that Sunday game. It's ridiculous. But right now, getting Gleyber Torres back is great. You still got to get Giancarlo Stanton back healthy, because even though he hit a home run on Sunday, it was against Tampa Bay at home, you really got to get him back healthy and right, because we all know with Stanton, he's one of the streakiest players in baseball. He will go on a run where it doesn't matter where you throw the pitch, it's going to go 400 feet or just sneak out of the ballpark. He'll find a way to hit a home run or get some type of big hit, and he'll go in a stride where he just cannot hit a baseball. He cannot hit a 90-mile-an-hour fastball down the middle. It's just the truth. And when you watch Giancarlo Stanton, he's really one of the more polarizing players in this lineup, and I think that's what the Yankees have a lot of, or that they're trying to avoid. They're trying to get these guys hot going in October. They have a lot of polarizing bats, guys who can go into great streaks, and obviously that's all throughout baseball. You're going to have that, but really it's about limiting those streaks and limiting the amount of streaks you go on as a player, having more consistent at-bats and weeks really of at-bats. DJ LeMahieu needs to come back because the Yankees really recently have struggled to find a true leadoff hitter. Experimenting with guys like Hicks at times, who is just I don't even need to talk about Aaron Hicks. Dude, Jesus Christ. Aaron Hicks, experimenting with him, even like sometimes Gleyber Torres leading off. I forgot who led off yesterday for the Yankees. I don't know if any of you guys know, but I know that it just feels like every day they've gotten a new guy to go into that leadoff spot. Yeah. So you really need that definite leadoff hitter in DJ LeMahieu. You really, I cannot stress this enough, you really need Anthony Rizzo back. You really need him back, because Marwin Gonzalez, I get he hit the home run 2 nights ago, but he is not that good of a player. He's what he is. He's a guy who can go in when there's an injury to a starting player and play the position very well defensively, and then give you, right now he's batting, I think, like 190 in OPS in the 600s. Not very good, but he also hasn't played all that much. He's a guy who maybe can bat in the 240s range, give you a 700 something OPS. A nice replacement utility man. One of the better utility men in baseball. He's really good at the positions he plays. Oswaldo Cabrera has been fantastic as a vet. He's acted like a veteran the way he's played right field. He just started playing right field in AAA right before he came up to the Yankees, and he's played. He's robbed the home run. What was that? His second game, I think, or third game it was in the major leagues. Robbed the home run in right field, and then he proceeded to make a great play at third base the next day, a great play at second base the day before that, I think, or 2 days before that. But you really need Anthony Rizzo to come back and be the first baseman, because Marwin Gonzalez can't really be a legitimate starter. He had that great year in 2017 where he was legitimately a solid bat in this lineup, in that Houston lineup, but not really a starting player. So you really need Anthony Rizzo back, because then what that also does, and I'll hand this over to you, Robbie, a Mets fan, to talk about the New York Mets right now, what's going on with them. You really need Anthony Rizzo back, because it allows you in the playoffs to force other teams to have to pitch to Aaron Judge. Because, even though, you have these guys out, right? Stanton, I'd rather pitch to Stanton than Judge right now, even though, Stanton destroys the Red Sox. If I'm the Red Sox, I'd rather pitch to Stanton than Judge. I'd rather pitch to anyone than Aaron Judge right now.
That is
the Red
fair.
Sox went to, what'd you say?
That is fair. And
yeah.
To be fair, I went to the Yankee game a couple of days ago on last Friday, and I saw Aaron Hicks make those mistakes on defense and him getting booed off the field, which was great to see as a Mets fan. But I like to also mention that the Yankees have won 8 of 10 after this struggle. I forgot to mention that. Yeah, you forgot to mention that earlier. They're playing Milwaukee, who has very competent starting pitching, but I still think the Yankees destroyed that series, because I do not like Milwaukee's offense at all.
Yeah,
and their bullpen's a mess. So I do like the Yankees in that series. You can tap into that.
I think it's Tyone, Cole, and I want to say Herman is going to pitch.
I'm not 100%
in the
sure.
second game, I want to say. But anyway, the Yankees have been playing a lot better recently. But really, and the Red Sox, what I was trying to say when I said I'd rather pitch to Stan and anyone else, is that I'd rather pitch to anyone than Aaron Judge. And they pitched him. They threw him breaking balls, which is kind of what you want to do. You don't want to throw that guy fastballs, but he proved to the Red Sox and to baseball that you cannot pitch to him at all. if you get Rizzo back, if Stanton is healthy and in one of his hot streaks, if LeMahieu is back, you really have to pitch to Judge, and because then Stanton becomes. A red hot Stanton is hotter. Is scarier than anyone else. And then Anthony Rizzo with the power he's shown, and then pitching Lil Mayhew is not an easy task as well. And now you got Gleyber Torres, who's hitting the ball to right field and center field now, and he's been the hottest player on the Yankees right now, even with Aaron Judge. But yeah, it's really for the Yankees. They've been playing a lot better. The division seems a little more secure now, although one more bad week of baseball can really change that. And it's good that Tampa Bay and Toronto are playing each other. That really evens things out. Gave the Yankees, that made the sweep feel a lot sweeter. But really, it's about getting healthy for the playoffs. Matt Carpenter really needs to come back as well. I don't care if he goes 0 for 30 in the playoffs. If the Yankees go that far, that he can go 0 for 30. But it's just having him in the lineup is so important as well, because he becomes another player that's really scary. So it's all about getting healthy, getting these guys stronger and healthier for the playoffs so that these guys can get pitched to. Or if you want to work around Judge, then it's not an easy task to work with these other guys. So it's about getting healthy. The pitching has been strong. It's also with Frankie Montas as a guy who I watch for, because he was your big acquisition. You replaced Montgomery with him. And even though Montgomery had a bad start yesterday for St. Louis, or 2 days ago it was, I think, he's been fantastic for St. Louis. And I think that's a lot with moving to the NL. And I don't think he really had a future with the Yankees, but you really got to get Montas to be that number 2 guy, because not number 2, but to be a solid number 3, because right now Cole is your number 1. I still feel confident in him, even though he's kind of at times yes, the other day it was 4 runs against Boston, which is not awful. He still won the game, but you got to have a better performance than that from your A's. And it's not just that. There have been other starts, and then you got Nestor, who honestly at this point I think I would give him the ball game 1 against anybody.
Absolutely agree.
Yes, at this point it's not even a joke anymore. It really isn't. But having that guy to be in the number 3 spot, it's really open. Like Herman has been solid, but I don't know if I trust him in a playoff game really. And then you got Luis Severino needs to come back. I think he's pitching Tuesday against Pittsburgh. So that's also something to look forward to. But really, Montas is another X factor. And then the bullpen is getting healthier. Scott Efros was great until he got hurt. Chapman needs to come back. I can't believe I'm saying that, but he could. He's just another arm. So it's all really about getting healthier. And these guys have done a good job of holding this team. They've really held their own. Judging that most of the team is injured. So take it away.
Yeah, you've been right about that, but I would like to mention that you mentioned Nestor Cortez as a possible game 1 starter, and Colin said you completely agree. I agree as well. I forgot to say that, but it's really going to come down to the bullpen. Clay Holmes, I believe he's been struggling lately, correct?
So he went on the injured list. That was like a Phantom IL stint. They probably told him to take a vacation in like some island for a little bit and really get his mind off baseball. Honestly, like I say that as a joke, but I feel like that does happen around baseball, and you don't realize that is Phantom IL stints where, like, I think we saw it with Sanchez Gary Sanchez a few years ago, where it was that, if you don't remember, that awful game in Tampa Bay where he just did not hustle at all. I don't even want to get into what he did, because that's going to take another 10 minutes to describe it. You just got to watch. I think it was July 2018 at Tampa Bay. You'll pretty much find it. It's the Gary Sanchez game, the infamous Gary Sanchez game. I think they put him on the injury list after that, and that was more of like a mental thing, not really an injury related there. That's kind of what happened with Clay Holmes. He's been a little bit better recently, but it's really been the control. The stuff is fantastic. We all know he's got some of the best stuff that you can have as a pitcher, but it's really about getting in the zone. He's been a little better recently, but yeah, he started to struggle. That's why they put him on the injury list.
So now I'm going to take it away so we go from the Bronx Bombers to the struggle in Queens. The Mets have lost 6 of 10, including getting swept by the Cubs last night, which was very bad to see. When you lose to DeGrom, there's a problem. Like when you have Jacob DeGrom just being
honestly,
lights out.
I think you're the Mets.
Yes.
when you lose when Jacob DeGrom pitches. It's just really it's wow. That's not even a surprise anymore. But yeah, that's
That
just
is
another,
very true. That is very true. But
Yeah.
the Mets have lost 6 of 10. They go into an interesting series, I believe, with Pittsburgh. A series that the Mets need to actually score runs. They've been struggling to score runs lately. But at the end of the day, it's just everyone getting healthy again. I mean, Edwin Diaz has just been Edwin Diaz. He's been absolutely insane. I mean, when you hear the trumpets, like it's
The
over.
game's over.
The
Yeah.
game is totally over. But yeah, they get a couple with Pittsburgh. I mean, this should be and you get 4 against Pittsburgh. If the Mets don't take multiple games in this series, they're in trouble. I feel like confidence-wise, there's just like that sense around the team that, yeah, we're really good, but the Braves have been better again. It's like the reoccurring theme. I mean, the Mets are becoming a meme at this point, to be fair, but at the end of
always been a meme.
at the end of the day, you really feel like, yeah, you have hope with this team. Everyone got hurt again. So I feel like this goes back. I pointed this out back home when I was on my own radio show at the trade deadline. The Mets I think they did absolutely nothing. They needed to do more, especially in depth. I mean, they got Michael Givens, and that's about it. I mean, that's a pro. Oh, and of course, Tyler Naquin, Daniel Vogelback. Daniel Vogelback, who's been solid, and Darren Ruff, who's done the equivalent of nothing, just sitting there at left bench. But at the end of the
has he gotten in that pet for the Mets? I feel
he got a hit last night.
They strictly got him to be a pinch hitter, and you gave up like 3 prospects.
Because like no one throws a lefty anymore. Like no one wants to throw up a left-hander against the Mets because everyone hits right-handed. That's good, other than Jeff McNeil and Brandon Nimmo. So and Vogelback, of course, when they play him. So I mean, at the end of the day, with the Mets, they need to get back on that consistent level. Like you see what the Yankees are doing and winning 8 of 10. They're doing it at their perfect time.
Exactly.
With games there's still not many games to go. You're in September. The Mets, they're going to be a playoff team, but you need confidence. You need DeGrom to come back to form. You need Bassett to keep pitching the way he is. Carrasco can like fix his form a little bit, but you just need everyone to start coming full circle, showing the team that we saw in the beginning of the year, heading into probably the All-Star break where they looked really good. And of course they've fallen off because it's the Mets. But at the end of the day, this team I think is still legit enough to make a deep run in the playoffs, or they can go out in the first round. I've spoken to multiple people, and they think the Mets can make it our World Series or first round. Yeah. They're that streaky. But I think Pete Alonso needs to find form a little bit more. Jeff McNeil has been great. He's struggled against Chicago, which I don't know if that's a red flag or not from the Mets, but
a lot of red flags.
And of course, the catching has been, hitting wise, has been completely atrocious. But at the end of the day, I feel like the Mets, I feel like they can find form, and I feel like this is the series to do it because looking at their schedule, they get to play with the Yankees get to play tonight tomorrow against Milwaukee, and then you get the A's, the Marlins, the Braves again in their next few games before going to play the Nationals to finish the season. So it's a very interesting stretch of games for the Mets. The series I would want to look at, other than I think you need to take 6 or 7 from Pittsburgh and Oakland to have any form of a chance to win the division, because the Braves are very streaky right now.
And really with the Braves, it's just that they played one last game. That's the only reason. You probably have a tied division.
I mean, the Braves look ridiculous.
Oh yeah. I mean, they did just lose a series to San Francisco.
That is true.
That's but San Francisco is that type of team that you don't, even though they're kind of, I think, where they
they're in third,
slightly below 500, but they're kind of a sneaky little team that kind of a pest.
They're that one team that's always just there. They have Logan Webb and no one else in their rotation.
Yeah.
It's always been a theme with
Rodon,
the Giants. Of course, Rodon, of course, as well. But I mean, the Dodgers have already won their division. You have the Mets and the Braves and Philly, I guess. And then the Central is just St. Louis and Milwaukee just trying to stay relevant. So the NL is a very interesting playoff picture. And Colin, you can dive into this in a second. There's multiple teams that you could really feel like are a contender that's not winning their division. And of course, Atlanta. But do you feel like there's any sneaky team that's currently in the NL right now that you think that can make that deep playoff push?
I mean, everyone thought that during the trade deadline, San Diego obviously was going to be one of the biggest players out there. And, you trade for Juan Soto, you pair that with you thought it was going to be Fernando Tatis, but then he got that suspension, and Manny Machado, and you thought that they were going to be the team to be going forward. But they currently sit there in the third wild card spot. They're only 2 games ahead of Milwaukee. But I will say that if San Diego does get into the postseason, they're definitely a team that you do not want to play because, Juan Soto, he's shown it before in the past, amazing bat in the playoffs. He really was the leading factor, kind of the heartbeat of that Washington Nationals World Series team. You also take a look at the other wild card teams. You see the Philadelphia Phillies. Now really have not been in this position for a while. They're usually a team that, by the end of the season, they choke it, blow it away. But they're in this position now. And, they have a 2.5 game lead. Maybe they make it. I'm not sure at the moment. But, Bryce Harper still going to be a player in that offense. But, it seems that the top wild card spot, it's not really deserving considering how, they both have 88 wins, 89 wins, but whoever does not win the NL East is going to be that top wild card team and is going to play St. Louis between the Mets and the Braves. Have to see what happens there, but you've talked about how the Mets have been falling off, they've been sliding, so you really don't know what Mets team you're going to see in the postseason. So on the outside, really the only team that's going to be coming close at this point is Milwaukee. So it's going to be basically a three-team race for the final two spots between Philadelphia, San Diego, and Milwaukee. And I'm actually curious. I'll either throw this over to Chris or Robbie. Out of these three teams, which one do you think is going to miss the playoffs? Will it be Philadelphia, San Diego, or Milwaukee?
Yeah.
So I'll dive into this first. I think, it should be Milwaukee,
I was gonna say.
but it's really going to come down to the two teams that are part of the Josh Hader trade. With you, if you think about it, with Hader getting traded to San Diego, and at the end of the day, I feel like San Diego has just had this mojo of yeah, we're really good, we can trade for all these incredible baseball players, and then you see what happens with Tatis.
Yeah.
So if they had Tatis, I feel like they should be the second wild card because the NL East is just that ridiculous. But at the end of the day, I feel like San Diego should be the second or third wild card spot. They should be, like I said earlier, they should be the second wild card spot. But they're starting pitching and Josh Hader just doing nothing at this point with I believe he's a 4-year ERA since he's gone on the team. I feel like if you can get Hader on form, because he hasn't been that ridiculous in the playoffs, I feel like if you can do that, San Diego with Juan Soto, of course, I feel like San Diego could make a deep run just because of the true talent they have. But I'll let Chris dive into this now.
No, I was gonna say, at your first glance at those three teams, you'd think Milwaukee. They have the worst record of those three teams, but they have the pitching, the offense. It's a little, Philly. They get the offense, but it's kind of inconsistent at times. I like Aaron Nola. Zach Wheeler's been, he's still been good.
Yes,
for the most part.
He's been a Cy Young competitor for a while now.
Yeah. So you got those first two are still there, but those guys are still there. But I think you see besides they're playing Washington and Miami the past couple games. Before that, they got swept by San Francisco, and then they got destroyed by the Diamondbacks in 3 games. But then they did finish that last game winning. I think it was 18-2 or something like that against the Diamondbacks.
That, yeah.
So it shows they can hit. But they are inconsistent offense. You're right about the San Diego. I absolutely agree with you that they have that mojo that idea that they're supposed to be this great team because they can get all the great players and they can catch the Dodgers. Right now, obviously, catching the Dodgers is clearly out the window because the Dodgers already won the division. But it's I don't know. Those are three teams. I don't think either of them will go very far if I had to make a prediction right now, but I would say the team that doesn't make it is the Brewers.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I just think inevitably San Diego will get in. I don't know. I think even though Josh Hader really has struggled, he's gotten better as of late. I'm pretty sure, at least I remember he was getting out of it a bit. I don't know if yesterday or something he did something. He blew another save, but he's overall, I'm pretty sure, been getting better. So if you can get him back, the Brewers got a nice return, but it was more of a future, looking at the future, getting prospects back. So I don't know. They're a good team, Milwaukee. I never like to count them out because they are a good team, but I just think inevitably they will fall short. And because you mentioned if there's a sneaky team that we thought was in the wild card race that we think has a chance to go very far, I'm looking at Seattle. I'm looking at Cleveland.
Ooh, in the American League, okay.
That's what I'm saying, in the American League.
Okay.
I looked at the American League at first, because Seattle really, I think, has a chance to go very far. They've dominated, right? Everybody, they've dominated. They had that huge series win against the Braves. They got everything. They have everything you want. They have the bullpen, obviously, with the the non-household names. You got the Your Paul Sewald, really, I think he's been the closer. Your Andres Munoz, young guy. I know Paul Sewald's a Met legend. Andres Munoz, he's been unbelievable at the closer role. You obviously have the young guy, Julio Rodriguez. You got the young pitcher, George Kirby, and also Logan Gilbert. You have Luis Castillo, which that was a move that a lot of Yankee fans were angry that the Yankees did not make. I wasn't, because that would have costed pretty much the whole farm system. Seattle has not been a good team since 2001. Or has not been a playoff team since 2001. So that's the type of move that you make when you're trying to make the playoffs for the first time in over 21 years now. So they have everything, and they've really dominated some good teams recently. They obviously won the season series against the Yankees, and the Braves. So that's two great teams right there. And then they beat Cleveland up, even though Cleveland's been winning some games, although they lost today. Cleveland's been still there. So Seattle's my wild card to watch in the playoffs. Also the Mets, if they get the wild card, that is, or the Braves, whoever wins that, whoever doesn't win that division. But moving on, for the last 5 or so minutes that we have on this podcast, I want to end it by talking about this American League MVP race. In the National League, it looks like Paul Goldschmidt's got it. I think he's like 2 home runs. I don't know. Again, I don't know if anything changed today, like while this podcast is going on. I don't know if Philly's playing right now or not. But I know Philly, Schwarber only has 2 more home runs. Freddie Freeman on the Dodgers only has 5 more points in terms of batting average ahead of Paul Goldschmidt. And then I know his RBIs, I think Pete Alonso has 2 more than him. So the Triple Crown race is very much intact for Paul Goldschmidt. He's going to win the National League MVP. I don't think it's particularly close.
I mean, that's fair.
I mean, who else is there?
Like, I mean, there's not really that
that's
much.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
if Alonso was still relevant, maybe you consider him, but he's sort of fallen off a cliff.
And I just think Paul Goldschmidt, for what he's meant to St.
Yeah.
Louis. St. Louis had that's the team right there. Everything they've had. If you're a St. Louis fan, you've had one of the best seasons, or you just had so much fun in the second half, really. Goldschmidt, Arenado. You saw obviously Pujols, what he's doing right now, close to breaking the record. Probably will, which is awesome. You got the Yadier Molina and Adam Wainwright breaking the record for the most games by a single battery pitcher and catcher together. So that's special. I think Pujols he broke the total base record, or I'm
not 100% sure, but I will mention this as a Mets fan. If we do play St. Louis and we lose to Wainwright, I would not be that mad. I would not be that mad because Adam Wainwright is crazy.
Yeah, and especially I think that brings memories back to 2006 about or as something from Mets fans, because he closed out that series.
Yes,
and Yadier Molina caught it, and you just see Shea Stadium in tears while watching Adam Wainwright. It's look, as a Yankee fan, I don't hate the Mets. I respect them as a team. I personally hate the Red Sox and Astros. Those are the teams I hate. But that's while seeing Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina celebrate on Shea Stadium's mound, that is pretty sad. And that's definitely what you think of as a Mets fan whenever you're facing those. I feel like even though we were very young at that point. Anyway, for the last 3 minutes now that we have, I want to talk about the Shohei Ohtani Aaron Judge race from the American League MVP award. Because look, I get what people are saying. Like, I get it. Ohtani is a phenomenal talent. I love Ohtani. I want to buy his jersey. I really like Angels jerseys. I would get his jersey first. He's probably, in terms of talent, the best player we've ever seen. He is phenomenal. His pitching has been great. His hitting has been
do you give him the MVP, though?
No.
You don't give him the MVP?
I give it to Judge. Because, I mean, first of all, obviously, you could talk about the home runs. Aaron Judge actually has a better WAR than Ohtani overall. Ohtani's WAR is 8.4, I want to say.
I believe
it's 8.4. And that's with pitching and hitting.
I believe it's 8.4.
Pitching and hitting combined, I'm pretty sure. Aaron Judge has a better WAR than that. And so you want to talk about value, you can bring that up. He also, it's not like Aaron Judge is a one-trick pony. He's not just a home run hitter. He's played center field and right field very, very well. He's robbed a home run a few weeks ago, and we all know what he can do on defense. I know for some people, they want to say that Aaron Judge doesn't pitch, so you can't really bring up defense to these people. You can bring up all the other hitting stats. I mean, the weighted runs created plus, I think that dominates Ohtani. He has, 30 more home runs, I think, than anyone else in baseball? Ridiculous. Unbelievable. The on-base percentage, the slugging, the OPS. Unreal. We have never seen this before. When you want to talk about, all right, we haven't seen it in a very, very long time from a player who is clean. This is history that we're seeing. So people want to talk about Ohtani being historically, breaking records and making history one day at a time. Look at what Aaron Judge is doing. Who did this? because even Roger Maris didn't do this, right? And Aaron Judge will break the record, I believe, and I think he'll get to the 65 that he's projected. Who knows if he gets hot again? Maybe he will pass that. But I mean, and I don't like the argument of if you put Aaron Judge on the Angels and Ohtani on the Yankees, then we're probably have different opinions.
I mean, it's a weird argument that
Yeah.
I do think Ohtani would be absolutely insane for how small Yankee Stadium is.
Right field especially. Yeah.
So I feel like him pitching that, like Ohtani pitching, I think Colin, you can dive in on this as well, has been absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
Like I would want him as a pitcher not over DeGrom. Like he would be him. Imagine him, DeGrom, and Scherzer. That would
could happen.
That would be the craziest thing ever. But at the end
of
of the day, it's an interesting topic to debate. But I'm gonna go with Judge for my MVP, just to put that out there. I feel like his talent he is the most valuable player on the Yankees, hands down. So I mean, you can say Ohtani's most valuable player on the Angels. You have Mike Trout. I mean, Mike Trout's been injured and all that, and Ohtani's done things we might never see again. But at the end of the day, Judge is just having his historic season. So, Colin, who do you got for MVP?
Well, we have less than a minute left, so I'll make it quick. But as Chris has mentioned, I am a Yankee fan. And so obviously I'm a very big Aaron Judge fan. And just what he's been doing this season is so phenomenal. I mean, we're looking at possibly the greatest hitting season without steroids in MLB history. So I think for that case, you have to give him the MVP. I do get the argument for Shohei Ohtani being able to be a two-way player, something we have not seen since Babe Ruth. Truly phenomenal what he's doing. But just typically, if that's the case, and it is true, you want to make that argument, he's the most valuable player. He brings the most to the table in baseball. If that's the case, and he would win the award every single year, and as really is the case, that just doesn't happen in sports. I'll make my first basketball reference here. If that was the case, LeBron James would be the MVP every single season in the NBA. So, I mean,
That's a good one.
You can't give him the MVP award every single season. Exactly. I think that he's going to win many in his career. But just in a season such as this one, where you have a player who is hitting really unlike anything we have ever seen before, I think he has to get the award. And I think Aaron Judge will break the Roger Maris record. I think he will have the most home runs ever for a player without steroids. You can debate whether or not that actually is the real, genuine home run record, him or Barry Bonds. But I think Aaron Judge is my MVP, and I think that he definitely deserves it for sure. Although Shohei Ohtani, phenomenal player, but I give it to Aaron Judge.
Yeah, and I mean, you also want to talk about clutch. Both guys are clutch. Aaron Judge has 3 walk-off home runs. The other big hits in extra innings and late in games that he's gotten for the Yankees. I mean, ridiculous. And it's you want to talk about history. I feel like everyone sees Ohtani and what the talent and everything he's done as being, historic, and we'll never see it before. And we have to appreciate it. These people are also not appreciating what Aaron Judge is doing. And really, I think I don't think they're appreciating Aaron Judge as much as he should be appreciated. I think just because he doesn't pitch, that doesn't mean he can't, that doesn't mean he can't win the MVP award. And yeah, you can't give it to somebody every single year, especially when Aaron Judge really has been better. I mean, this is not normal. Not even Vladdy Guerrero was doing this last year. That's why it was unanimous for Ohtani to win it. Aaron Judge is doing something that is not normal, historic, special. We may never see this again. Who knows? Maybe we will. And maybe it'll be Aaron Judge who does it again. Who knows? Obviously being a free agent at the end of the year. But if you guys have nothing else to add.
Yeah, no, I guess I'll do the outro here. This will be the end of our first ever podcast. Thank you all for listening. A lot of fun, getting kind of used to this new studio. We're hitting something that, not a lot of us are really used to, nice setup here we have. We'll be here every Thursday from 5 to 6 talking about sports. Excited to see what happens in week 2 of the NFL, and also seeing as the MLB playoff picture continues to develop. Later on, as we get closer to the NBA season, maybe we'll talk about basketball. Maybe, you guys are big soccer fans. We can get into that as we get near the World Cup. But yeah, looking forward to talk about sports for at least the rest of the semester here on this podcast. So for the first ever CCR podcast, name still pending. We'll see if we like anything else later on. But as of right now, for the first ever CCR podcast, we will be done now. I am Colin, joined here by Chris and Robbie, and we are signing off. Thank you all for listening.